Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today we have returning guest for the fifth time, Peter Fitschen. He has a PhD in nutritional sciences, is a pro natural bodybuilder, and has a wealth of wisdom. Before we dive into today's main topic, we actually talked quite a while about Peter's own progress during his off-season, because last time he had just concluded his contest prep, and we discussed things like how often is he hitting PRs. Now he's been training, I think, over 20 years, and how does he like to track his own progress. The focus of today's episode is on training adjustments during diet periods. I asked Peter questions like, does he make any inherent adjustments to his training when starting a diet? And generally, we explore his approach to training whilst dieting, including things like, hey, what does he do for a deload? We'll also delve into performance expectations for dieters. How does performance typically change during a diet? Can people really grow muscle during diet phases? And what does Peter do when performance sometimes, and for many of us, will drop during a contest prep nearing the end? Peter will share his insights on exercise selection, volume management, and the role of intra-workout nutrition during a diet. So whether or not you're preparing for a competition or just looking to optimize your training during a diet phase, this episode is packed with valuable advice for you. As a reminder, guys, here at Revive Stronger, the way we make our living is through online coaching. That is one-on-one personalized coaching where we take you through your training and nutrition, and we also take care of sleep. We like to hear about your lifestyle. We make sure our communication is really upheld, because that is the key for quality coaching in our eyes, and that's done via our video check-ins. Many coaches will have email check-ins, or they might send their clients a Loom video or a video response. We also get our clients to send us videos so that they have the ability to really talk through their thoughts, feelings, and explore that a little bit more. So it's really great, and we find that allows us to get the best results, and our clients absolutely love getting their weekly or bi-weekly check-ins depending on what they're doing. So just a reminder, if you're interested in our online coaching service, it's always linked in the description. We have a fantastic team of coaches, including myself, of course. But without further ado, let's get into the chat with Peter. So Peter, last time we spoke, we were talking about your contest prep, in fact, and how you were keeping it quiet. And I think at the time you somewhat convinced me that that's what I'd want to do, and I clearly haven't done that. I don't know if you've seen, but I've ended up doing literally weekly updates, which is probably not exactly ideal. So we're now, I guess, at opposite ends of the spectrum, where previously you were, I guess, just post-show, whereas now I'm 10 weeks out from my first show, and now you're deep into your off-season. So I thought I'd just start with kind of getting an update on you, how you're doing.
I've been out of a deficit since my show. So we've actually I always work with Cliff in the off season. I think I've worked with him since like 2014. I think it's over 10 years straight now that I've worked with Cliff. No breaks in there. I think, especially by this time of the year, I spend 10 years. So 10 years, 3 preps, because he prepped me in 16, 20, and 23. So, we got my weight back up. I started feeling it was around this time last year, because I competed in like March, April. So by like this time last year, I was about 20 pounds over stage, and I was feeling pretty good again, and strength was back up. You know what I mean? Like you're back to like, all right, like I'm good again. And we've been able to take, I'm like 194 right now, the heaviest I've ever been while working with Cliff's about 197, 198. But like my strength's really high. I still have abs. Like this is the best I've ever looked at, over 190. I snapped a picture and posted it on social media, and I sent it to Cliff, and Cliff's like, dude, you still have abs at over 190. This is crazy. Granted, I have the body fat distribution where like if I were to lose my abs, we're in a world of hurt, because I'm probably like 60 pounds over stage at that point. So we've like taken it slow. We got that first 20 back on or so, and then it's been, I think the last year I've gained maybe like 15 pounds. Nice. 15, 16 pounds, just really slow. We've got my food pretty high, training hard. I've let Cliff write my workouts, which is always, for people that, you've had him on probably talking about training before.
Unconventional.
What?
Unconventional, I would say.
Yeah, man. Up to like sets of 40 on some things, like sets of 20 on like side delts with a 2-second squeeze at the top of each rep. Yeah, he just sent me a new workout that I got to start next week, and like I think the first leg day is like 10 sets of 20 on leg press. Like,
Oh my
it,
God.
yeah. I mean, there's also heavy stuff too. Like, I mean, I pulled
Yeah.
I pulled I did a 425 for 6 RDL last week. Like, there's heavy stuff in there too. But yeah, yeah. And so I think things are going pretty well right now. I'm 38 and a half or so now. And, I've been lifting for 22, 23 years, something like that, consistently competing for 20. And so, there's always something that, ache and pain here or there that you're working around or doesn't feel quite right. But I mean, I've been able to, knock on wood, avoid any major issues this off season outside the little things that pop up here and there.
Yeah, I think that for the longevity of a bodybuilder to keep making progress, lack of injury is a huge plus. We can work around things all we like, but when you can't do some of the kind of core basic stuff that we all know works, it's just trickier.
Yeah. No, and I agree. But I think too, I've gotten smarter at working around stuff rather than, I mean, younger me, I would just plow through whatever. And, I've done better in the off season having someone write my programming. Usually I've worked with Austin Stout for a couple of years going into my last shows too. And same thing, like just having someone else writing my workouts and telling me, no, you actually do need to deload it. Hey, like, you're a little beat up. Let's pull back and only train 4 days a week with some lower volume for a few weeks and get you feeling better and then push again. You know what I mean? Rather than just like, if it's up to me, just guns blazing, full steam ahead. And I think as I've gotten older too, I've gotten better at being okay with off days. I think when I was younger, I didn't know what to do. I think that's common for a lot of younger competitors, right? You don't know what to do with an off day. And I feel like, I don't know, I'm busy enough and have enough stuff going on and train hard enough and have for long enough. Like I look forward to those off days now.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great point. Is probably when you're younger, you can just take so much and you can't beat yourself up anywhere near as much. So the off days, maybe you don't quote unquote need them as much as when you're as advanced, like you've been training for over 20 years, you're pretty damn strong. Yeah. You can beat yourself up pretty well. So you kind of are like, I'll take them.
And I think too, you get better at being able to push further, as you get, as you become more advanced, right? Like, I that's always been one of my knocks on like young guys getting caught up in like RPEs and stuff, is that many of them don't truly know what taking it to that failure is and how incredibly hard being 1 or 2 reps shy of the bar falling on you is. The last plan Cliff had me doing, I started with a set of 15 on squat. And I got to the point where I squatted 315 for 15 for the first time. And I mean, that like building my way up to that, I mean, it just really shows, how much further and harder I can push myself, and I can take a couple deep breaths and just keep, let's hit another one, you know what I mean? And go. And I mean, yeah, I'm dead after the set. And, but I was never able to take something to that, point when I was younger, you know what I mean? A lot of times you see, I mean, me too, right? Like when I was younger, like in college or something, I'm sure when I finished a set, I was like, oh, that was such a hard set. And I'm sure I had more reps there if I really pushed it.
Yeah, for sure. I think you only need to go into any commercial gym and see people kind of working out as I guess they're like exercising as opposed to training, which is like for a specific outcome. And really, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, you see that, right? And you go to someone asks you to spot them and like they'll send the rack and the weight and you're like, last
you're good for 5.
The same as the first one. Like you're half a dozen reps shy of failure, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because I think of the way I would think about RPEs and RARs now is it's a tool for someone probably more advanced to hold them back versus someone early. They kind of need to push the bounds now and then. Of course, when you first start, it's all about technique and kind of making sure you're doing it safely. But past that point, you need to learn how to work hard in a safe manner. And then, at your stage, at my stage, I think you get to a point where you're like, I can really dig myself into a hole if I'm not careful. So I'm guessing, as an example, you're 4 sets of 20 on the leg press then. How do you manage that? Do you have to reduce the load across the sets quite heavily, or do you manage RARs and RPE?
Yeah, so that's 10, the 10 sets of 20 in the new plan.
You'll
I haven't
learn.
started it yet. I gotta start it next week, but uh yeah, he has me like using the same load for every set. So like the first ones are supposed to be sub failure, and then you're getting failure by the end. So yeah, it's gonna be a matter of like, like we're gonna have to go pretty light and kind of feel this out so that I don't just die by like the fifth set.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that sounds really brutal. I literally did legs today, and I did 3 sets on the leg press
yeah,
at like a RAR 3. It's my week 1 as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Cliff's not doing my training program yet at the moment. That might change in future when I kind of decide I want to give him those reins as
yeah.
well. It sounds like you've had time doing your own training as well. Is that right? Where you've kind
Oh
of,
yeah,
and then offload it at other times, but nutrition, you've
yeah,
always given the keys to
yeah,
Cliff.
yeah, yeah. No, so yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I mean, just given where I was as a college student and stuff, I only worked with the coaches during prep. But so I worked with Lane Norton during 06, 08, and 2012 when I won my pro card. 04 was just a local coach, and then yeah, Cliff I started working with in 2014, and I just have worked with him off seasons and everything. But yeah, just for the nutrition side. And when I worked with Lane too, it was just nutrition. But I've worked with a number of different people on, training programming over the years, and I feel like I've picked stuff up from a lot of them. I worked with Mike Zordos for a while. I worked with Mike T. Nelson for a while. I got some off the wall stuff from him, but like it some of it, you know what I mean? Like I still, you know what I mean? Like there's things you pick up from that. So that
Were
was,
those
yeah,
powerlifting specific with Mike Zodos and Mike T? I'm guessing powerlifting more so.
yeah, I mean, it was power. It was, I mean, they knew my goal was bodybuilding, but there was still like powerlifting spins to it. Mike T.
Okay.
Nelson's was more, there was a lot of hypertrophy,
Oh,
pumpy
cool.
work with him too. Yeah, he helped me with some injury stuff, and yeah, he was really good at that type of stuff. Yeah, I've had, obviously, Cliff wrote my workouts, Austin Stout wrote my workout, so I've had a number of different people, you know what I mean, like write programs for me over the years, and I feel like, I've ran a number of John Meadows programs. I've always really liked his programs, and so I've picked stuff up from, you know what I mean, just all of that, right?
Yeah.
And I think over the years I've tried, a lot of the stock like programs that have names and stuff too, right? I've run, what have I run, like dog crap. I've run Max OT when I was really young, which was probably a good program for me at that point, actually, when I was early on in training. Just any number of them, right? Like when the powerlifting craze was, popular in the bodybuilding world, I ran Shiko. Like I ran West Side around that time. So like I've done, you know what I mean, a lot of different, styles of training, and so I think, you blend that together, right? There's stuff I like and
Yeah.
dislike from all of them, and you blend it together for what works for you.
Yeah. That's it. That's the way I actually view the podcast in many ways, where I get to talk to so many people in our field with varying opinions and ideas, and
Mhm.
I get to question that, and then I kind of pick and choose where I'm like, hey, I like that from that person, I'm
Yeah,
going to program that, or I don't know, experiment with it. It doesn't quite fit.
yeah,
So I think that's a great way to go about things. And yeah, even working with Cliff just through the nutrition, I'm learning just small things of like, how does he communicate? What small
yeah,
changes is he making here?
yeah,
How's he managing me as an athlete? It's great to have that experience. I think
yeah,
if you are a coach in this field and you haven't had a coach, it's kind of a little bit of a red flag for me in some sense, like, because we
yeah.
coach others, we know how helpful it is. So I think it's a great sign if someone's had a coach, certainly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's so hard. I mean, when you get really, really lean, there are people who can do it. There are people who can coach themselves and they get peeled and they look great on stage and nail their peak and all of that. But it is so hard to coach yourself and, to not be in your head at the end of prep. I mean, you look in the mirror one time a day and you think you look great. You look in the mirror another time a day, you think you need to lose more fat. You're flat, this time, like, you know what I mean? Like am I losing fast enough? Where does my weight need to be? Um, you know, you could be in a situation where, you have like striated glutes coming in and you're thinking, yeah, I got to get another like 5 or 7 pounds off yet. And you know what I mean? Like you're probably only a couple away. You know what I mean? It's just hard to stay objective when it's you, it's so much easier. Like I can look at someone else, but it's so much harder when it's me. And so having that, yeah, that, and that way I can just focus on my clients, and then just I do what I'm supposed to do food wise and training wise, and I report back, and I don't have to worry about my stuff really, because someone else is dealing with that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think even like this initial stages of prep for me, I'm getting towards like the tricky part where I think the coaching is going to come even more
Yeah.
valuable. But even those initial stages, it's just nice offloading that
Yeah.
stressor.
Yeah.
And my clients will say that the same to me, because I coach a lot of coaches, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's so invaluable to have you doing this for me. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And it's been a while since I'd had someone taking care of those things for me, and it actually just reduces stress a whole bunch. So that's only doing your physique wonders in its own right.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And like I said, there are people who can coach themselves, but I will say, like, I know a lot of them still will, they'll coach themselves, but they'll still bounce ideas off of
Yeah.
people. Like I have a few people that I know that I'm friends with that have coached themselves, that like will, shoot me some pictures. Oh, what do you think? This is where I'm at. I'm thinking this. Am I on the right track? You know what I mean? And help each other out. But I think without doing something like that, I think it would be very, very difficult. You know what I mean? To do it all yourself without ever bouncing it off, any ideas off of people, nothing. I think it can be done. I mean, there are people who do it, but I think for the average person, you're going to be probably better off working with someone.
Yeah, we're not robots, and you can't just have this calculator that takes you to stage through a
Right.
certain algorithm, what have you. And it's the same. For my first prep, 2014 was my first prep, had a coach. And
Yeah.
then now 10 years on, my fourth prep, I have a coach. The ones in between that I did, I self-coached, but it's exactly as you said. I had people I could consult with, reach out
Mhm.
to. And so it kind of helped. But the last prep, 2021, I really realized how much I valued that element. I'm like, I just want someone to take the helms completely and see if
Yeah.
they can do a better
Yeah.
job than I can, having
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I see no reason why it wouldn't be better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you're working with Cliff, so I mean that's someone who's seen, you know, hundreds of
Yeah.
high level physiques on stage. That's one thing I'm always like, man, like some of the people he works with, I'm probably one of like the least genetically gifted, high level people. You know what I mean? I oftentimes wonder, of his client roster.
I had the same thoughts. I was like, will he even be interested in working with me? Because I am not to the standard that he's used
Yeah.
to. So I try and live up to the saying I like is, obviously for me, a pro card is like a dream. So I like
Yeah.
to live as a pro before I'm a pro. It's similar to you get what's it called? A promotion at work. You got to kind of
Mhm.
be doing the job before you get that. So I see it the
Mhm.
same way. So for Cliff, I'm like, at least I can be a pro level kind of client for him
Yeah.
and do everything I need to on my end. And
Well, and
you're probably the same with your clients, where you don't
yeah.
mind what level they're at, so long as they're
Oh
giving you a
no.
good go.
No, I had a first time competitor compete a couple weeks ago. I got a first time this weekend and two first times next weekend. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
Like let's have a good experience. Let's get lean, get you on stage, have a good experience. You know what I mean? This first time around. And yeah, no, I mean, yeah, everybody starts from somewhere. Yeah, like I definitely didn't win everything the first time I competed. But one thing I was going to say too is I don't think a lot of people realize either, here in the US, like how much harder it is to get a pro card in Europe. Like it's like what it used to be here in the US like 20 years ago when I got started. Where there are only a few pro shows, you know what I mean? Like for the year, and the ones that are not every show is a pro qualifier, and the ones that are ungodly competitive. I mean, when I first started competing, 2004, I did a show that was a pro qualifier, but I only did teen and novice. Like I was like, people didn't compete in the open class at pro qualifiers at their first show, right? And like even 2006, I did two shows that weren't pro qualifiers. And 2008, I did one that wasn't, and then I did one that was, and that was the first time I did an open class at a pro qualifier, and it was my third prep. You know what I mean? And I still had a long, long way to go. And then I won my pro card in 2012, which was right when things were maybe starting to shift a little bit. Like not every show was a pro qualifier yet at that point, and there was only bodybuilding, so the divisions were still bigger here. And so I had to go seek out a pro qualifier. It was competitive. You know what I mean? You had to win the overall, all of that. And then now it's to the point where, every show here in the US so what you have there is much like what we used to have here, 10,
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago. And it's much more difficult than winning a pro card here.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And I think that makes me think of like not all pro cards are made equal in that way, because in some sense, I do feel like for maybe someone who's not like genetically like very top tier, maybe you've got some
Mhm.
clear weaknesses or what have you, like I feel like I have, if I'm to go pro, it's like the things have got to be in my favor to some extent. Yes, I want to have earned it, and I think I will have. But say in the same instance, it's because someone better didn't turn up. Like
Yeah. Yeah,
that
it's
definitely happens.
exactly. Yeah, and like in my case, I mean, when I won my pro card, I won the lightweight class by a point. And then I won the overall straight up, but the lightweight class by a point. I mean, different panel of judges, that could have definitely gone the other way. I mean, and ironically, I ran into that same guy at my first pro show, and he took third and I took fourth, and he beat me by a point. Yeah,
Happens,
my
yeah.
first pro show there. So I go to the show in Kentucky, and I think, oh, this will be a nice small first pro show, because like I'm not genetically stellar or whatever. And then I find out, oh yeah, Cliff's got two other guys in this show, and they're both just ridiculous. And then I show up, and the promoter's like, yeah, I got 9 pros in the show this year. I'm like, what? He's like, I've never had this many before. And so, yeah, Cliff's other two guys took first and second, because one was Mike Porter. I don't know if you know who he is. He one of Cliff's clients that won. Cliff prepped him like 3 different times. I think he won literally every show he did in like 3, 4 different sanctions, like pro shows, right? Like I always tell people, like in 2020 or 2016, my first season of the pro, Mike Porter showed up at 2 of my shows and won them. He didn't show up at the third one, but had he would have won that one too. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, so Cliff's guys took first, second, and then I was fourth, which I was completely thrilled about, like, but yeah, that was pretty nuts. Like, when you see some of these guys and you're next to them on stage, you're just like, man, like the guy who took second was his client AC that just won that NPC show as a natural.
Oh, I
Uh,
see.
yeah, yeah. He took set. Mike was first, AC was second. So I was on stage next to like those guys. We got pictures together after, and I was like, man, like they're way bigger than me, but like at least I like conditioning wise matched them, and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you know,
That's something you have more in control for yourself, which
yeah.
I think is great. And that's always something I've enjoyed about it. But I think, yeah, the true test of a pro is how competitive are they once they turn pro. That kind of tells you quite a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, like IP Worlds last year was just nuts. I mean, you got guys like Bada. I had Carl Sievert, my client in that class. Bada, like there were just Malcolm Cooper. Like the class is it was just freak after freak. Like those classes are insane.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's levels is what I kind of think
yeah,
of to natural bodybuilding, and but it's been great to see your journey and process through it all. I know we've done podcasts on that before, because I think it's a great example of kind of how natural bodybuilding should be done, is like just enjoying the ride, enjoying the process, and embracing that element of kind of the muscle coming on like paint drying in some sense. And actually, on that note, obviously we talked about how long you've been training and everything. I am interested in, and you talked about your squat PR actually. How often are you finding you hit like personal records, and like how do you track that? Like, do you often look back to make sure how things are going? And or
yeah.
yeah, I'm interested to hear.
So I'm still pretty old school in that I track like everything in a notebook, pen and paper. So I have my nutrition, like my water, my sleep, my training. Like I mean, I've had this for probably daily for like 2 decades or more now. Like I've thrown some of the really old ones out. They've gotten lost in some of the moves I've made over the years. But like since I moved into like this house like 8 years ago, I mean, I everything from that and probably a couple of years before that is all back in back in my bookshelf back here. But yeah, so I still track everything. I got a pretty good, you know what I mean? I got pretty good idea of what I'd hit and stuff. And you kind of remember some of the big ones, you know what I mean, over the years. Like, yeah, I mean, I remember when I pulled 505 for 4, like on a deadlift, like that's a one that sticks out in my mind. That was between 2016 and 2020 when I was playing around with some powerlifting stuff. But I don't go that low rep usually now. But yeah, how often do I hit PRs? Not super often. Like I'm still getting stronger. So I've hit some this off season, like, I'm back up, on a movement like squat. I've hit some PRs this off season. RDLs have like skyrocketed um, over the last few years. Like I'm still hitting PRs there. Um, it's hard to say on a lot of the other, some of the cables and machines. You know what I mean? You can't really compare. You got to compare machine to machine. You can't. Um, one hack squat, 5 plates on the side, you're doing it no problem. And another one, 3 plates buries you, right? It's like the first time I did a pendulum squat, right? I thought the pendulum squat, the first time I did one, I was like, oh, this is like a hack squat. Well, I can do like 4 or 5 plates on the side of most hack squats. So like, I'll throw a plate on the side for a first warm up set, and it just about buried me on the first rep because I didn't realize how
Yeah.
much harder they were than, uh, uh, you know what I mean, a hack squat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not hitting PRs super super frequently, but I definitely am still. I mean, right now I'm still probably about as strong on most things I've ever been. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's I still eke them out here and there. I mean, for sure. And we're still, I'm still trying to progress. It's just, yeah, I don't go under. I mean, Cliff's programs do push me into the 4 to 6 rep range some, but I don't do a lot of under on my, my own accord. I don't do a lot of under like 8 or 10 reps.
Yeah.
Just as I've gotten older, I stay healthier, not venturing down there as much.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, a really good point on how free weights are great because they are comparable.
Yeah.
Even sometimes barbells are a little bit beat up and like
Yeah.
weigh a bit
Yeah.
less or whatever. Same with dumbbells, maybe they're a bit off,
Yeah.
but they're at least within reason. But like cables, machines, like different hacks, like if the angle's slightly different or whatever it could be, they're miles apart. So that's interesting. And I guess do you have like a progression methods that you follow within the training? Do you follow like a double progression, triple progression, or how are you
Yeah.
kind of going about that?
Usually the double progression is usually kind of my go-to a lot of times, right? Like, if you're trying to hit sets of 10 to 15 or something like that, and you're doing 3 sets, once you can get 3 sets of 15, bump it up, you know what I mean? And then work to progress reps until you can get there. And yeah, the double progression that's usually just kind of my standard go-to. It's the simplest way. And, I think too, one thing you have to realize as you get, you're not a beginner when you're not a beginner anymore, is that there are going to be better and worse days. Like, there are going to be days that you can come in the gym and you're going to load, whatever. I mean, I just had that this last week. I was doing Smith incline and I loaded something on there and I was like, that I thought I was going to use for my sets. And I did it. I was like, whoa, that popped right up. Like I threw another 5 or 10 pounds on a side and pushed it a little more that day. Felt really good, but there are days that it's the other way around, right? Like, and so I think you gotta, you gotta know, like, hey, like you're not going to PR every day. You're not going to get stronger indefinitely forever. Like there are going to be, ups and downs along the way. The hope is just like generally it's going up over time. Um, and that's where, some of the, people that like the power lifters, right, where they're measuring like bar speed and stuff like that. I'm sure they could show you like real data on that, right? Like, hey, I'm warming up on a squat and 225 today just isn't moving as fast as, I'm trying to move it as explosively as I can in my warm-ups, and it's just not moving as quick as other days, or it's moving
Yeah.
really fast today, you know. And
Yeah.
to have some numbers behind that.
I think that's really well said. It makes me think of, although I know Cliff doesn't take weekly average, like he doesn't take daily weigh-ins and a weekly average, but it makes me think about that where you're kind of don't get obsessed about one weigh-in across the week, like one training session or one performance. Look at the average, how's that trending over time, and that should be more indicative than a one-off, because like you said, all sorts of things can happen that could lead to a one-off better or worse performance.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I also there are just so many things, that can affect a program. And I remember, I think years and years ago, John Meadow was talking about that, you know what I mean, like one of his videos. And I was like, like, because someone asked him about like progressive overload and whatever, and he's like, well, if you've been lifting as long as I have, like it's not going to just go up. Your strength's not just going to go up every single, because he had been lifting 30 plus years at a really high level. And he's like, there are going to be better and worse days, and you know what I mean. And And, as I've gotten older, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, okay, like, some of these older guys, some of the older guys that would post stuff when I was younger, you start looking back and they're like, yeah, there's a lot of truth. Like John Meadows or like Dante Trudell, you look back at a lot of his stuff and I'm like, okay, a lot of the stuff he was talking about when I was like, in my teens and early 20s on message boards, like, there's a lot of what he said that, okay, now that I'm getting older, I get it. Like, he's on, you know what I mean? He's right on a lot of things.
Yeah. I think the more more experience I've got, the greater I appreciate wisdom. So I think of someone like a Jeff Alberts, at least as like in the natural scene, like the Godfather.
Yeah.
And I look back at some of the things he would say, and I think if I heard them 10 years ago, I might not have I definitely didn't appreciate them as much as now I appreciate them. I'm like, oh, actually, I was a bit too, I guess, gung-ho on like the science and what that says. But actually, a wealth of experience, someone like, again, Cliff to bring him up, or even like yourself, Pete, you've got so much experience now that actually is really invaluable.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was probably guilty of that myself. I mean, earlier on, you it needs to be by the book and, whatever. And sometimes it just isn't, like, people ask, well, what's the protocol for peaking? Because I've had people actually ask me this, like in the science world, different people I went to grad school with and whatnot have asked me, what in the bodybuilding world would be cool to research? They're like, what about peak week? And I was, and I was like, how are you ever going to do a study on that? Because you can give two people the same size carb load. One of them could be a watery mess for like 3 days, and the other one could be flat. You could be two people similar age, gender, you know what I mean? Like all of it, right? And you give them the same size load, and you're going to get two completely different outcomes. So I don't know that it's possible to, you know what I mean, do a study and determine the one best, approach.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those, like when people talk about bodybuilding as being an art and a science, that's definitely where these two have to go really hand in hand. The more people I've peaked, I've seen some extremes where people have had to have absurd number of carbs. I'm like, what is even going on? Are you lying to me with the amount you're eating? And then other people where it's just like, hey, I'm glad we tested some refeeds to see that you have like this soft load look and what have you, that just allows you to then come in better for stage. And I think it's a big risk if people try and find that like silver bullet of peak, because it's going to work for as many people as it's not going to work.
Well, and I remember I picked someone up. I don't even remember who it was. This was years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago. I picked up a client and they had told me they had worked with like a local coach who brought, 12 of them or something like that, from their gym to this show. Right. And they were all doing bikini. And the morning of the show, he brought them all like pancakes and bacon and sausage and just, greasy, high salt, high fat food and stuff. And I was like, well, did you guys test this out ahead of time? Because like I've had a couple of clients. I had a guy last year actually placed pretty high in some pro shows that approach works pretty well for, but we tested it right ahead of time. And they're like, she's like, no, she's like, a couple people got actually like sick. One person looked pretty good afterwards. And, the rest of us, I don't know if it made much difference, but I think if I remember right, she had said they had all cut water and stuff while they were doing it. So, yeah. And so like that, but like one person looked great after doing it, a couple actually got sick and, everybody's different, and so you gotta look into some of this stuff, right? Like you can't, it's something so simple to do, right? Just to, like look, I mean, even if you don't have time to test out like a higher refeed day, like something beyond what somebody's already doing for a refeed, just something as simple as looking at like, can you give me pictures the morning of, morning after, 2 days after, do we see much difference? Is there a difference? What do we see? That can go a long ways in giving you an idea of what somebody should be doing, should do, peak week, right?
I wonder, I mean, it's getting better now because more and more people come in shape, but I think at least over the years, so many people don't even see, like they can't see the changes because they haven't got the body fat low enough to be able to see that.
Yeah, no, that, and I've told people that before, like, if I have someone who's really not going to be ready for a first show and they want to do it because it's close to home or a kind of a warm up show, and then we keep dieting for something later, a lot of times I'll say it like, they're like, what do we do for peak week? Probably not much anything for that first show. Keep pushing for more loss because that's going to mean more than the peak week. And then once we get you leaner for that second show, like then we'll do some loading, into
Yeah.
it.
That makes so much sense. Pete, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on was to discuss the topic. And it's cool because we're talking about peaking, and that kind of rolls into the discussion here of training whilst dieting. And I think we'll talk about specifically contest prep as well, because I think that is a little bit of a different thing. But I'd like to, first of all, just get your kind of thoughts surrounding training while starting. Is there any inherent changes you make to the program when you know someone is going into a deficit?
Not really. I mean, usually my general theory is whatever built the muscle is probably going to keep it there. So, keep training like you have been. I mean, I remember like my first prep, 20 years ago, right? Everybody, the bro science was high reps get you cut, right? And so, I remember my first prep doing only sets of 15 and 20 throughout prep, and, supersets and high reps and all of that. And like that's not needed. I should have just kept training heavy, and so but I will say when somebody gets closer to stage, and you're getting very lean, food's low, I think you need to, pay attention to recovery. And if and that's why I'm always asking clients, like, how are you recovering? Like, are you recovered by your next workout? How, strength probably isn't going to be great by the time you're stage lean. Nobody's really hitting PRs when they have strided glutes. And so, but like, are you recovering? Are you beat up? How are you feeling? And maybe we pull volume back a little bit at the end. Maybe we reduce some of the intensity techniques, some of that at the end if we need to. And peak week, yeah, I treat that usually like a deload, essentially.
Yeah.
You're really backing off then so that someone doesn't cause much inflammation that blurs lines or isn't sore on stage, or we're trying to drop cortisol, stress on the body just from backing off, training and cardio and stuff like that. But you know for most of prep, most of your cut, I would keep training it, like you normally are, because that's what's going to keep the muscle on your frame. Especially as a natural, like we don't have any help like holding on to muscle along the way. Like you got to keep training hard and keep creating that stimulus.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
Yeah, I think that the quote of what built the muscle will keep the muscle is just a great thing to think about.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I agree with you. It becomes like your recovery reserves are down. And I think some people think immediately, cut volume, but it's like, hey, but volume is with intensity, a really prime stimulus for muscle growth and therefore retention. So you don't want to suddenly cut that down, but your average volume over the long term is probably going to come down a little bit because of that recovery process.
Yeah.
You mentioned strength there. Have you found, what do you tend to find for competitors getting stage lean? Do you find there's a point of which where it just starts dipping, or how do you tend to manage that with them?
Yeah, and it does at some point almost inevitably for almost everyone. Like it's lean enough. I think most people when they're going to like true like shredded stage lean, at the start of prep, you still might be making some progressions. Your body fat's higher. You're in a deficit and losing, but you're not in a huge deficit. You're still at a sustainable body fat. You might get stronger. Then you go through for a lot of prep. Like I find a lot of prep, I end up just kind of maintaining or maybe maintaining just a touch below my peak strength levels for a lot of it. And then, yeah, when you get really lean, you're just trying to hold, I'm not someone that can maintain strength well when really lean. I'm just trying to, push what I can, and it gets tough. But I think, one thing I think has helped that I found helps me, and probably obviously clients as well, is, you were probably around maybe like 10, 15 years ago, and like the HIIT cardio craze was the
Yeah.
thing. And I had a prep in 2012 where I was doing 4 sessions of HIIT cardio a week and training legs twice a week.
Oof.
Yeah, I remember like warming, but at the time, like everybody did HIIT. That was the science-based thing to do, right? Like that was like there was those couple studies, and meta-analysis and stuff that was showing like HIIT causes similar, adaptations to strength training. But like when you're doing a ton of it, you can't recover. And I remember warming up on leg press during one of my workouts late in that prep, and like there was nothing there. I'm like, how am I gonna get through this leg day? Like, I got 2 plates on the side of the leg press, and there's no push here today. And so, I think one thing over the years that I've done, and I've done with clients too, is shifted away from more of that high intensity stuff for a lot of them, and tried to focus more on the step counts and the walking. And don't get me wrong, if you crank steps up to like 20, 30,000 a day just to try to eat more food, like that's going to have the same effect. Like that's way too much. But like, trying to nudge activity up a little bit beyond what someone's doing, go out for some extra walks, and, trying to do a little bit more on the low intensity side, so you can maybe get away with a little bit less on the moderate, higher intensity side. Oftentimes helps with recovery from lifting, and not seeing as much fall off in performance or recovery or things like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. You actually mentioned yourself specifically that you don't tend to hold on to strength. I don't know. I've had mixed with clients getting to like stage lean, where some can hold it pretty well. Others tend to it's really a struggle for the final weeks. So you've had the same, have you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there are definitely, and I think it depends on division too. If somebody's in, men's physique, you don't have to get you got to get lean, but you're probably still like 5 pounds away from like bodybuilding striated glutes lean, or if you're in bikini compared to like someone who's in women's physique or women's bodybuilding, you got to get very lean for bikini, but you don't need like, chest striations and like lines coming in your glutes from the side, like someone in women's bodybuilding, you'd be too lean. And so I think some of that, like that, helps. I think also in oftentimes people who are newer to lifting, you know what I mean? Like, like newer to lifting, like they don't lose as much throughout, probably because they're still farther from their genetic ceiling than, someone lifting for 20 years. And there's definitely individual differences though. Cause I mean, I've had clients where like you're killing them with super low food, and you're like, how do you feel? And they're like, I'm fine. How are workouts? You're thinking their workouts are terrible. No, I'm still not really losing much strength. And then you have some people where like their food's not low yet. They've only lost maybe 5 pounds, and like, I'm starting to lose strength. And there I'm wondering sometimes if it's a mental thing, you know what I mean? If you're losing it that quickly, because I think, psychological, hey, I'm going to lose strength. So I'm going to just, you know what I mean? I think I'm going to lose strength. So now I'm just manifesting it. For me, like I said, I can usually maintain, even progress a little early on. And then it ends up, a lot of my prep, like this last prep I was maintaining maybe a touch below peak strength levels for a large portion of prep. I was still really pretty strong, even into the low to mid 160s. It was getting me below 160 in that last little bit. I mean, it would, every time I feel like that in my life, when I get to like striated glutes lean, it's like a just an absolute battle to try to even maintain strength week to week. Which is a really good sign that, hey, I probably shouldn't live there long term.
Yeah.
And, I definitely, you definitely don't have to convince me to gain weight back after a show, because it's, when you're lean and it's not, it's not fun in the gym. Like you're just trying to survive and maintain as much as you can at the end. But it's that necessary, evil, right? Like you got to get, for someone like you talked about it too, you or we're not the genetically elite. So like you got to bring the conditioning, because that's going to be one of your strengths on stage. And so it's just a necessary evil to push through.
Yeah, I think you mentioned some really good points. The point on division makes a ton of sense. There was a recent case study review of all case studies of bodybuilders, male and female, and females tended to actually often grow muscle, and that was associated with, hey, they don't tend to get as lean as the male competitors.
Yeah.
So I
early
think
on in prep, you probably are growing muscle when your body fat's not super low.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a great point. And I think also training age makes a big difference there. So yeah, it's just a bit more risky for when you're more advanced to see those performance drops, and then it differing a little bit person to person. I wonder if that's in relation to intervention points. So like maybe if someone stays leaner year round, they're just their peak, they're closer to the same body comp, so they're not going to see as big a change. I think you tend to get quite a bit heavier. So if you're in the 190s, you compete below 160. You're a bit heavier.
On stage. Yeah. No, this my kind of range that we cycle between usually is about 180 to 195 ish, something like that. Like, I mean, there is a plan here probably within the next month or two to run some sort of off-season cut here after, but I've been out of a deficit since April of 2023. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? That's what you want, that long period out of a deficit, and then we'll cut off, get me back closer to 180 or the low 180s. Because like we talked about when we talked a year ago, I mean, I really do need to get up. I've just found every time, like, to really be strong again in the gym and feel good. I mean, I need to be in the upper 170s. I mean, I can be pretty healthy and function fairly well into the low 170s. And last prep held strength reasonably well, even to the mid 160s. But yeah, just for me, like, hey, do I have any leeway with life? You know what I mean? Like, in the off season, I got it. And just strength wise and stuff, that 180 to 195 ish range is kind of my range, it seems like. And if I'm going to get anywhere and make any sort of progress, I just need to get like 20 ish back on me. And everybody's different in that, right? Like, there are the freaks of nature, like you said, who can maintain their 5-10 pounds over stage weight. I had a woman a few years ago, I was trying to argue me. We didn't work together long because, it was just someone where we clashed a little too much, like everybody's personality doesn't fit with you, but she was only like 7 or 8 pounds over stage. And she's like, I don't need to go up any more than this. And I'm like, you're like 7 pounds over stage. You're still crazy lean right now. Like, and so she went and had blood work done. And I was like, sure enough, everything looks good. Like, all right, I guess, if you're getting stronger and you feel good, you are one of the freaks of nature who holds, you have normal cycles, you know what I mean? Like, all the hormones look normal, you're getting stronger, you feel good, your food's relatively high. I guess you can hold under 10, over, but that is a freak of nature. Most people can't hold anywhere near that close to stage lean and be healthy.
Yeah, that's definitely not the norm. And actually, I wanted to reflect upon your cardio kind of suggestion too, in terms of, hey, let's make it lower intensity generally. I think that's a great kind of call there. And in addition to that, you probably had it with clients where, especially the ones who are maybe losing strength early on within a diet, you look at their lifestyle and you're like, you're getting how many hours of sleep? Like, your stress is what? And you're like, oh, this isn't a good environment to kind of get you there. So you almost have to suppose that everyone's got all their kind of ducks in a row, and even then you're probably going to see some numbers drop off. But I don't know if always seeing those numbers drop off is indicative of muscle loss versus just a lower, you're in a worse position to perform, your leverages are different, you haven't got as much kind of glycogen available to perform well. How do you make that call? Do you ever make that call where you're like, yeah, your performance is dropping, but it's, to me, look, this is a risk of muscle loss at this point, and I think maybe we have to we need an intervention at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can often see that, right? Like, if it's like leverages and things like that, and just stability, that's one thing I'll notice in myself is a lot of the isolation movements and machines, I don't see a ton of loss in strength. It's the ones where I have to actually like stabilize, like squats. Like, I just feel like I'm getting absolutely crushed trying to squat when I'm like near stage lean. And it's more just a battle to stay upright and not get crushed. Like the stability part of it more so than the actual leg strength. But you put me on like a a leg press or a hack squat, and there's much less strength. I mean, there's some, but much less, you know, and like a leg extension or a hamstring curl, probably even less yet. So yeah, sometimes it's that. So, you know, when you talk about leverages, but yeah, it can be, you know, hard to know. And when you work, you know, you work with someone a couple of times, you know what I mean? You start learning their trends or their, you know, because everybody's a little bit different. You know, you start seeing like what's normal for them or not normal for them, or, you know, the longer you can work with someone, often the better. You know, as a coach, like the better it can be, right? Like, you know, I have a guy who's a pro that's doing shows this fall, and I prepped him in like 2018 or 19 when he won his pro card. I prepped him when he did his first pro shows in 21. I'm prepping him in 24, and we worked in the off season between all of them. So we're coming down the stretch here in the final weeks of prep, and we're starting talking about peaking stuff, and you can refer back to like, well, last time, you know, this, or last time that, or what did we do? You know what I mean? Or, you know, and you kind of have something to go off of a little bit more. You know, I just had another guy this last summer, long-term client. We worked together for like 7 or 8 years, multiple preps, and won an overall at a OCB show that was actually fairly sizable for a show here in the US. There were like 15 or 16 bodybuilders. He won his class, won the overall. Like, yeah, but it was, we were able to like draw off of things we had done, you know what I mean, in the past, right? You know, and he just, you can get better and better. Even if someone gives you two shows in a season, they can usually be better the second time than the first, because you see how their body reacts the first time, and you know, like, okay, yeah, maybe, you know, we thought this, but like, hey, you probably looked a little better Friday than Saturday. We can shift things a little bit in the week, or hey, you could have filled out a little more. We can push a little more, or, you know, like you can just, usually as they go throughout the season, you know, maybe they need to lose another pound or two. Who knows what it is, but you can help them be better, show to show. Like the more shows, when you only have one shot at it, oftentimes I'll stay a little more conservative if I only have one shot, you know, because you know, I would rather them be a little bit flat and we're loading more carbs in than spill them over or take some risk, especially if we don't have a second show to like make it better.
Yeah, I completely agree. And your point on leverage changes and them being impacted more so by certain lifts makes complete sense. And I guess that's a strategy you could use, is going to more stable lifts, more machines, maybe where that kind of isn't taken into account as much. And I know some people like to switch exercises a little bit more frequently when they're dieting to kind of, I kind of see it as ignorance isn't bliss in that sense. Like if I'm seeing, I want to know performance is dropping on something and fight to maintain it. And there might become a time where I'm like, hey, it's just not worth continuing that fight. Let's rotate in something else. Yeah. But often I find if someone rotates too frequently there, they don't put as much effort forth. And when you're dieting, come back to the like proximity to failure, you can kind of, I don't know, feel sorry for yourself, not push yourself as hard. How do you like going about exercise like swaps during, or variation during preps?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one where, like, you know, I want to run a plan as long as it's going well, and then we'll deload when we need to deload. We'll change things up, you know what I mean, from there as, you know, needed. For oftentimes it's almost more mental than physical, you know what I mean, like give you something different to progress for a little while here. But yeah, I'll have people run plans, and I've always been one where I don't tell people how long we're running this plan or when we're going to deload. I kind of let it, you know what I mean, like let their progression and stuff dictate that. Sometimes life dictates that, like something comes up and it's like, yeah, this is a week that we just got to back off, train fewer sessions. This is our deload, and it is what it is, right? And you know, because even someone dieting for show, like nobody bodybuilds for a living. Like nobody makes enough money competing that, you know, in natural bodybuilding, that's what they're doing for a job. There's other things going on. But yeah, I'm one that, you know, we do a few weeks of progression. We just kind of see, okay, how are things going? All right, let's keep going. Let's go a few more weeks, you know what I mean? Or a couple more weeks, or you know, if someone says, yeah, I'm just really beat up, you know, this hurts, that hurts, I'm getting run down. Okay, let's deload. And, you know, sometimes for some people that might be, hey, in 6-8 weeks, we're deloading in something new. Other people, it could be like 12 weeks, you know what I mean? Or 14 weeks, you know, if they're feeling good, we're not going to stop that, you know. You know, if they're still actually progressing it, you know, like when it gets far enough in, I'm like, okay, like, are you actually getting stronger at this point? Like what, and I've had some beginners, so like newer lifters where we're on the same plan for 6+ months. They just keep getting stronger. So
Yeah. Yeah, why not at that point? Actually, you mentioned
Yeah.
deloading, and I would be interested. There's, I don't know, some people have mixed views on, some people were like, hey, you can't deload during a diet phase or say a contest prep because that's time where, like, I don't know, they seem to think that that's something you can't do, whereas I'm always like, hey, fatigue's going to accumulate faster during a diet, so you're probably more reason to deload. How do you tend to kind of approach your deloads, and do you do anything different nutritionally during that phase?
Usually not. It depends on the person, their timeline, but usually not. Usually I just have them do the same food wise, the same thing. But what someone does for a deload, I kind of give people, we try some different things. I kind of give them some options where I'm like, okay, we can train. Here are some lighter workouts we can do. You can take some extra days off. You can take more days, just let me know what you're doing here. Like, but the goal is being recovered by the end of the week. So whether that's lighter workouts, whether that's more days off, whether, like for me, as someone who's more like just the years and the mileage on my joints, I just take days off, and both Austin and Cliff, the last two people writing my programs, were both completely fine with that. You know what I mean? Like we, if I need recovery, I just take the days off. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't go and do something light. It's just take the load off my joints for a few days. And so, but the goal is you should be, recovering and be ready to train hard for a while. But yeah, during prep, I would definitely deload because if you need it, because I mean, if fatigue is accumulating and you can't train hard and then you don't ever like back off, then how many weeks are you going to just not train hard? Obviously there's a difference between needing a deload and just, feeling like junk late in prep, but sometimes you do have to push through, but like, yeah, I mean, you should still probably back off if you need it during prep, because I would rather someone's training hard, if taking 3 to 5 days out of the gym or a week training light or something like that means someone can train hard the next few weeks, they're probably going to be better off.
Yeah, it's one of those where I don't even think it's a step back to take 2 steps forward. It's literally taking a step sideways to then continue moving forwards. Because if you have got that fatigue accumulating, joint connective tissue fatigue, psychologically, you're just in the ground, performance plateauing, maybe even dipping, like it's just clear, hey, pull back to be able to move forward. And I really like your approach to deloading where it's, hey, keep the goal. By the end of this, we need to be recovered. So don't do anything silly during this week, but have some freedom there to be able to enjoy or just take days off. I've started enjoying just taking days off as well.
Yeah. Like I said, younger me just struggled with deloading or being out at the gym or not. I still struggle with not going hard when I'm in the gym. So I think part of that too is why, taking days off, but also just, I tend to just feel better. And, I think some of it comes back to also just the longer I've been training, being able, now I push I can push a lot harder than 10, 20 years ago. Right. And, just having the mental break from that is probably a large benefit as well. Like not just knowing, okay, I got a few days before I got to do a crazy leg day or something like that.
For sure. On the training front, one little thing that I also like to maintain performance, I wonder how you like these, because I think the industry we're in, maybe the evidence-based space, is a bit divided on intra-workouts, for example, and their utility. I have found ever since I started using one years ago, I just liked it. And so there's something that I keep in kind of year round. And the time I see most value in it, when I think about why would it be beneficial, is when I'm more likely to be glycogen depleted. I'm like, hey, in a diet, especially really lean, maybe the time I'm going to be most depleted. So I try and hold on to an intra-workout with plenty of with as many carbs as I can afford for as long as I can. And I tend to find that helps. What's your experience been?
Yeah, Cliff always tries to have me, include an intra workout, and I'll have some clients that like it. I always find, a lot of times it's kind of comes back to the same question as like the clients who train first thing in the morning, right? Someone who trains first thing in the morning, it's what can you stomach? Oftentimes is more the question, right? Like, for some people it's nothing. for some people it's liquids. Some people, they actually can get some solids in, you know what I mean, before training when it's early in the morning. And I feel like with intra-workout, it's the same way. And yeah, some of it's how many carbs you have available. Like, are you going to be able to drink some of your carbs and still stay consistent throughout the rest of the day and not starve? But some of it is too, yeah, what can you stomach, or, are you someone that, doesn't do well throwing, you know what I mean? Like with something sugary during your workout, or something sugary, some EAAs or something like that. I think, a lot of times that's person dependent, but yeah, a lot of times my food is so high in the off season, I usually drink, I have intra, and then during prep, my food gets disproportionately low. So I'm like the 4,000. I mean, I'm up close to 4,000 calories a day right now, but like the worst of my last prep was like 1,900. Less than half of my off-season intake. So like when I'm down there, there's little to no intra, at that point.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Compared to now. But yeah, much like you, I tried Cliff, and Cliff usually, working with him, he kind of dictates when to pull it and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think the adherence factor is key there, because it's kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like, if you're going to include an intra, but that means your adherence isn't there, well, that's actually the most important thing. So let adherence first of all dictate. But at the same time, an intra, for some people at least, I've found can help bolster that training performance, maybe hold numbers a bit better. And you're just on a tightrope right at the end of the prep. So it's like every little thing, you got to individualize it at that point. So I think you're kind of, for some people, maybe, for others, maybe not.
Definitely individual, differences. I think it's, funny, people that are outside of this, industry, right? Like, I'll go give a seminar, and, I got asked to give one in a few months here at, for a show, and that's in the Midwest here, near here. And one of the guys at my gym goes, "So you go and like tell people like what you do as clients and like share your industry secrets with everybody?" And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, "Do you think that's a good idea?" I said, "Yeah." I said, there are parts of this where I can tell you what to do and give you a general, but like, I had a client this year who, like, we reversed, kind of, her load was like kind of a reverse almost into her show. We didn't load, we just like reversed. And so every day for like the last 2 weeks going into her show, she just sent me pictures. I said, "Do this." And we reversed in, and she won a pro card, so like some of that stuff, it's experience, right? Like, it can't be like, I can't tell someone how to, to do that necessarily. And so, like I said, it's individual differences. Like you have this podcast, right? You coach. Like, most people probably have a really good idea of like how your approach to coaching and what you do with clients, but there's still that individual factor that like it's not everything, just telling people what you do.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, it to me is a bit of a red flag if some coach thinks they have secrets, because it's like, hey, we all know the general broad strokes of what works in principle. And there's individual cases where you might have to do something a little bit different. But I mean, that's not a secret. That's just being a good coach to your client. So I think you're doing absolutely the right thing with sharing all the information. And then people still come to you for coaching, because there's a lot more to coaching than like textbook information.
Well, I was just going to say that. I mean, I don't know if the guy at the gym realized that like Cliff and I wrote a book on what we actually do coaching people, and so, it's been out for like 5+ years now. So, if someone wants to know my general approach, it's out there, but there's still the individual component to it. And like we said, just having someone else to rely on, and, and a lot of times, like you said, I don't remember what we were talking about like holding yourself back, right? or holding someone back. I feel like when you're prepping, or we're talking about RPs and RIRs, you were saying, you feel like someone advanced, that, and I would agree that it's, you use it to almost hold people back that are advanced from running themselves into the ground. And, I feel like during prep, a lot of times, like when you're coaching someone, especially like to really like like someone like you or I, right? Like I'll do whatever I got to do, like, and I will run myself into the ground if I, you know what I mean? Like I don't care. I will just go. And so having someone to like put the brakes on that and say, no, we're ahead. We need to do a diet breaker, or yeah, we need to like, you're ready. Let's reverse into this show, or, like, putting the brakes on it. I mean, I had a client last year, really good bikini pro. She competed, I want to say like 4 or 5 pounds heavier than she had 2 years prior. And she's already, super advanced lifter, you know what I mean? Like really strong. And she was like 5 pounds heavier on stage. I don't know that she gained 5 pounds of extra muscle that off season, in those 2 years. I think a lot of it was we just held the brakes a little more and, stopped it when she was ready instead of just continuing to run herself into the ground. And then she was like 5 pounds heavier on stage.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. I do think a big role of a coach is saving clients from themselves in many ways, and more of a like general guide rather than a dictator. That's what I was going for, like a guide versus dictator. I definitely agree. Pete, final question. What are the future kind of competitive goals for you? Do you have anything in sight, a year in mind, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm about a year and a half from 40, at this point. So I mean, and it hasn't quite been a year and a half since my last show, you know what I mean, shows. So I've really always done since 2008. It's always, so early on I did every 2 years, but then, once I got a better handle on what I should be doing, it's been every 3-4 years so that I, make progress between. And so, yeah, I competed at 37. I'll probably be 40, 41 when I compete. I want to be 40 and do, at least 40 and do a master's class. I don't want to diet down at 39 when I could just wait another year, and do masters, and the masters are nuts still these days. I was just at a show earlier this month. I was at a show and Marshall Johnson won the Open Pro. He's like 62, 63 years old now.
Crazy.
It looks phenomenal. The guy who took second was one of Cliff's clients who's around my age, and there were 5 guys in the pro class. And I mean, but like Marshall, you know what I mean? Like you see guys like this into their 60s and stuff. So even doing 40 plus classes, I mean, some of these guys are going to be, still insane. But yeah, I'm probably waiting till, I'm at least 40.
Very exciting. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to keep up to date with your process, with your clients, if they want to check out yourself for coaching or your book, where should they be heading, Peter?
So you can go to my website, fitbodyphysique.com. My Instagram's at fitbodyphysique, or I'm on Facebook as myself. So, I mean, any of those will work. And the book you can get from Amazon, or it's linked on my website and social media.
Amazing. I'll make sure that's all linked in the description. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you again, Peter, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.